We've been telling you the story of the Justice Department in the United States government telling us that Mansour Arbabziyar, this Iranian-American, managed to put together a plot that involved the senior levels of the Iranian government to kill a Saudi ambassador on United States soil. And I was incredibly skeptical of it. Yesterday, I told you about at least half dozen security analysts saying that this doesn't make any sense. Now there are dozens of analysts saying that. Some calling it amateur hour, the other ones calling it Keystone Cops. And look at the skepticism all the way at the New York Times, which is as mainstream as it gets and usually just writes down what the government tells them. But look at the skepticism they have about the story. They said there was, quote, a wave of puzzlement and skepticism from some foreign leaders and outside experts. A wave of skepticism. They went on to say senior American officials themselves were struggling to explain why the Quds Force, an elite international operations unit within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, would orchestrate such a risky attack in so amateurish a manner. So why would they do that? That doesn't make much sense, right? Well, it's not making sense to anybody. But, of course, some people are jumping on it saying, oh, that's it. This is a red line that's been crossed. We got to go get Iran. In fact, one of the guys saying that is Juan Zarate. He was a deputy national security advisor for combating terrorism under George W. Bush. He says it crossed the red line. When they ask him, do you think it makes sense, though? Here's his quote. It was very extreme and very odd, but it was also very sloppy. If you look at what they've done historically, referring to the Quds Force, they can put operatives on their targets and execute. They usually don't outsource, but keeping things inside a trusted network. So even the guy from the Bush administration who says, oh yeah, we should go get him, is like, on the other hand, it doesn't look like them at all. Remember, one of the top former CIA analysts in the Middle East, Robert Bayer, came out yesterday and said, look, if the Quds Force wants you dead, you'd already be dead. They don't do amateur hour like this, and they outsource it to a drunk in Texas who then tries to get a hit by a Mexican drug cartel on the most important hit they've ever done in their history on U.S. soil. It's crazy talk. Well, if you think that's not crazy enough yet, let's go to the San Antonio Express News, okay? Because they went and talked to the people who know this Mansour Arbabziyar character, including a guy who ran a business with him and his what used to be his best friend and roommate back in college, okay? First of all, the San Antonio newspaper says that everyone they talked to described him as, quote, scatterbrained, hapless businessman. And then they also called him absent-minded and shifty. Okay, all right. This doesn't give you a lot of, trust that this is a high-level agent for the Quds Force who's coming to execute you. But it gets much better. So they talked to David Tomsha. He is a businessman in the area who used to run a used car lot with Arbabziyar. They said, what do you think of him? He said, quote, he was pretty disorganized, always losing things like keys, titles, and probably 1,000 cell phones. This is the guy who is operating this massive plot. Well, they went back and talked to his old roommate, Tom Husseini. They went to Texas A&M University at Kingsville together for a couple of semesters. He said that this guy, not the idea that he would do this plot, but Arbabziyar himself is, quote, a joke. That's what he is. But it gets better. When they asked Tomsha, the guy who ran the parking lot, the used car dealership with him, hey, did this guy look like the kind of guy who would attack the United States? Here's what he said. And by the way, he has no love for Arbabziyar. Arbabziyar bankrupted him with his clownish maneuvers in the used car business, okay? He said, but, quote, he never spoke ill of the United States. I always thought he liked it here because he could make money. He loved to make money. This is the guy organizing the plot based on religious zeal? Really? Well, he does like money. I think that's fairly relevant as to who might have put him up to this. And here's back to his roommate. Here's what he says about Arbabziyar. Quote, he couldn't even pray. Doesn't know how to fast. He used to drink, smoke pot, go with prostitutes. His first wife left him because he would lose his keys every other day. This guy is not a mastermind. The guy smoking pot, going to prostitutes all the time, massively disorganized, lost 1,000 cell phones, everyone calls a joke, was the brilliant, masterful mind that the Quds Force, the top revolutionary guard in Iran, came up with to do their most important hit job ever. The first time they were attacking on U.S. soil. Oh, come on, who could believe this? Now, here comes the best part. You know what they used to call Mansour? They wouldn't call him Mansour, he had a nickname. You know what his nickname was? It was Jack. Now, why was it Jack? He was named after Jack Daniels because of how much whiskey he used to drink. That's why his friends called him Jack. That's the Iranian mastermind who wanted to do this killing based on religious fervor? The guy who didn't even know how to pray? This is a joke. And when I saw this, I thought, yesterday I told you Attorney General Holder probably, I mean, he's not the one doing this. They probably believe this curveball kind of character because they wanted to believe him. But if you see this, and the FBI must have seen some of it, I mean, you tell me you didn't know anything about this Mansour character, and then you come out and say he's the biggest mastermind, and you've unfoiled this, one of the largest attacks that was going to happen on U.S. soil. Killing a diplomat on U.S. soil is incredibly important, right? It's what some people call an act of war. And you looked into this guy's background and thought, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy the entire Iranian leadership trusts to pull this thing off. That's ridiculous. Nobody could believe that, except apparently the United States government. Here's David Cohen. He is with the Treasury Deputy Undersecretary for Terrorism, and he says, oh, no, this story's very real.
There already are skeptics out there saying this individual, Mr. Arbabsiar, may have been, desperate for money, and he was just making up all this, and he got you guys to go along with him, and you're blowing this way out of proportion, and you know all the allegations are being firmly denied by the Iranian government.
Well, that's no surprise that the Iranians are denying this, but we looked long and hard at the evidence here, and we're persuaded that this was a real plot that involved the Quds Force, involved Mr. Arbabsiar trying to recruit someone from a Mexican drug cartel to conduct this operation, and that, as I said, that Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force, in his role of supervising all of the operations of the Quds Force, was himself responsible as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, they know. They know that it's linked to the head of the Quds Force, and hence, as some senior administration officials are saying, also the head of the Iranian government, not only Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, but Ayatollah Khamenei as well. They all knew it. They all did. Let's go back to the New York Times. Let me quote a senior American official. He says, quote, "It would be our assessment that this kind of operation would have been discussed at the highest levels of the regime." The highest levels, okay? Now, here is a quote from the New York Times following up. American officials offered no specific evidence linking the plot to Iran's most senior leaders. No specific evidence. None.